Okay, so I just barely seen this right now. One of my friends in the Discord added me to this. He's talking about some. Oops, I want. Yeah, he's talking about some fighting game VR thing. That's what this is. Apparently this. So it apparently just came out yesterday, right? I already seen it, but we'll put it on again. We're not gonna see the whole thing. Go ahead and watch it. It's called Final Fury. So apparently these guys have made something before. It's called Synth Rider. So I don't know much about VR games that much outside of PlayStation, but apparently it's supposed to be like the competitor to Beat Saber. So that's a pretty good sign if it shows that they've already worked on something before. But I just want to give my thoughts on it. Yeah, that's just really it. But for now, we'll put this song on silent so we can play the trailer out. Let's see. It's crazy because apparently it's been in development for. I mean, look, there's a trailer that was announced a year ago, but now I guess now it's the real full trailer today. I don't know. And they got the little funny arcade stuff and yada yada. Everything's good. Yeah. Before I forget, we do need to give some context. Is that so? For those who don't know already, I actually play fighting games competitively for like a good amount. I've played almost all of them. I got like top 100 Potemkin for Guilty Gear Strive. I played a bit of Tekken. Right now I'm master rank with Guile and Luke, getting Jamie, Geef, Honda, and Ryu up there. They're like Diamond 3. So needless to say, I'm pretty good. But also, like I said, we'll get into it, right? You can clearly tell that so obviously I know how to play them, but knowing how to play them and knowing how fighting games are developed are a completely different story, right? But I've been really into it, watching how like art styles and yada yada works. But we'll see it a lot more. It'll be more prevalent once I go to explaining a lot more in depth.
Fight!
So the first thing we're gonna start off is obviously like that's the whole point of VR. They're kind of how they're standing and whatever. I don't want to pause too much, but clearly I like how they went to transition for 2D. And they say it in the description. It says, yeah, it's like upcoming arcade style fighting game reimagined for VR, right? So. I don't know how many VR combat. Okay. So we'll go, like I said, you guys can go watch this in your time. So the first thing I noticed that is really unique is this. So normally in fighting games, this is like a deflect or sometimes absorption. This is usually character specific. It's not universal. So I'm assuming this is just like a fun way to interact with the other thing. Also, I don't know if this has PvP or only PvE. I have to double check how that works. But one thing is, yeah, I like the little shield thing. The shield thing, it says defend. I like how there's a big indicators, but my thing is I have no idea how to defend. Okay, so this seems to be a critical art. For those who don't know, critical art is like a super in fighting games. Not sure how it starts or whatever. This is what I mean. Like, I'm glad I'm breaking it down because I'm gonna be honest. When I first watched it, I could not tell it down. The only thing I could tell is them punching back projectiles. Yeah, that's again. Also, that was definitely a CA. So, one thing immediately why I want to say is that so clearly it's a fighting game on paper, right? Like. And the thing is, this isn't even unique. Like, this posture, like, if anyone has played, like, boxing on Wii or rip-off Wii Sports, as I like to call it, is Sports Champions for PlayStation 3 on the PlayStation Move. Like, it's the exact same thing. Like, you know, you kind of stable, but I feel there was actually more movement in the Sports Champion. You kind of move around and you duck and weave. Closer to something like that one Dungeons & Dragons, you know, the sword game that's fairly popular. Insurgency? It's, like, up there. It's an indie AA or AAA game. But the main thing I want to get at, it's like why it's the reason I want to say this is not so much a fighting game is for two components. Like, let's go to what I posted on the Discord, actually. That'll help further get my thoughts across. Let's see, where is it? Oh god. But yeah, in a traditional, like in a regular sense, like, oh, it's as much a fighting game as, like, you know, the Naruto arena games or Smash or fucking even rip off Wii Sports is, right? It's like, okay, yeah, you're throwing hands, right? In a very vague sense, sure, but like in the terms of like a fighting game? No, I don't think so. It's missing a lot of components. That's what I want to get about. And like I said, and then say it's reimagined and then for VR, and that's one of those key things you could give it a lot of flack. But it says arcade style fighting. It's like, if I'm being honest, a lot of these components feel more modern than they do like classic arcade. And let me get into my thoughts, because once I actually got around to seeing it, so it's like, yeah, I can see how, yeah, because he thought it was turn-based, because the fact that you're kind of just staying there, like, the first thing is that it's not very mobile, right? So I'd say technically, yeah, we're to explain that, yeah. And it's missing, the two things I noticed that, to me, that's missing the most is that it's missing, like, spacing and, like, execution. But I also want to talk about, like, there's not a lot, like, yeah, there's back and forth, but not in the same way as fighting games, and we'll get into that. But the key thing is spacing. That is something that is completely different. Yeah, like I said, you're too immobile to really call it a fighter, but I never really like rip off Wii Sports and Wii Sports. It's like I never sat there and said, oh, they're not a fighting game, right? I think they're probably closer to a fighting game than I'd say Smash, right? But it's not quite there yet because there's just a lot to fighting games. Yeah, and I said due to the unfamiliarity with the moves and rule set, props, visual clarity, it seems more of a VR game. Doesn't really follow fighting game rule set for cutscenes, for example. There's a lot that goes into fighting games. Yeah, yep. But I get them not being into it because it's VR. And I'll explain exactly why I think fighting games can't translate to VR. And by the way, when I mean fighting games, I mean games like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Tekken, right? I should emphasize that. Or maybe they do not know the VR. Personally, I'm happy with Rip-Off Wii Sports. Yeah, personally, I would prefer playing Rip-Off Wii Sports, but... yeah. Anyways. Oh, we can put this back on. See, it has like an auto movement system, so you don't have to work. So again, similar to Rip-Off Wii Sports. But let's go to the first thing that people don't realize is, so when I mean spacing is footsies, this game lacks any footsies. As you saw even in the beginning of this, oh, what the hell, I did not put that at all. Look at how the characters start. You, in most fighting games, you generally have the ability to move back and forth. And you can either move a little bit, back, forward, you know, like you have a full range, including jumps, it's not even mentioning jumps, right? You can, but you see how they have these little circles? It seems that you only have an option to maybe back up, neutral, and attack. That's it. Only 3 options, and you only stay in static positions. And there's not even a sidestep, and it's like a 3D arena thing, which is crazy. And maybe it seems like the moves are like, you know, it's purely 2D, and if there is a 3D aspect, it's purely aesthetic. It's not functional, say like something like Tekken, or maybe, who knows, maybe there's like weaving, I can see that, but definitely no sidestepping. So you need like leg trackers, and if they do, I don't know. Who knows, there might be more to it than we think. It'd be closer to Tekken if that's the case. Because 3D fighters play very different from 2D fighters. Like, good example, like you guys saw this super. Let's see where we saw earlier. Like, it looks like he sidestepped that. See that? You would just sidestep it. But it seems like if you do a super, it's guaranteed, right? So, and that's the thing we call footsies. You know, that's what that is, right? So we want to show you that's what the concept of spacing is. And I'll let this guy explain it fairly well, right?
Flashing fists, but instead the space surrounding the characters. Like brushstrokes of calligraphy, the secret lies in Ma, a Zen Buddhist term for the gap or negative space between 2 structural parts. As game designer David Serlin writes in Playing to Win, the best players are well aware of the nuance of positioning and fight hard for it. In fighting game terminology, this is what's known as spacing or zoning. And how you space or zone has everything to do with the stage layout. But what's so important about the stage? It's just a box, right? Well, unlike a real-life martial arts tournament, a match of Street Fighter takes place in 2 dimensions, and it can be spatially arranged in several different regions. The first division is by height. This is what's commonly known as aerials and the ground game. Both zones must be accounted. Street Fighter are generally of the short, mid, or long range variety. These segments serve as guideposts to line up to find the sweet spot that complements your air and ground game while nudging your opponent out of theirs. Said, when a chess player looks at the board, he does not see a static mosaic, but a magnetic field of forces charged with energy, which sounds a lot like M. Bison's Psycho Power. But that's still a bit. Positions 2 and 4. Right now, they're a little bit too far apart to land a blow. Thus begins the playing of footsies, where both players are tentatively dancing on the edge of position 3, attempting to land a strike that will knock the other player back to the space where they want them. Say Ryu lands a sweep first. He will take a small step back into position 2, while Ken is carried by the momentum from the kick into position 4. Now he's in the perfect zone. From here, he has all the control, and Ken is kinda screwed. There are a couple options for Ryu, but a great one is a fireball, because it keeps the pressure on Ken to react, and as you'll see, gives Ken few good options. 1, Ken can get hit by the fireball. If Ryu throws it at exactly the right time, it's unavoidable. It's what's known as a meaty fireball. 2, maybe Ken gets up and blocks it, taking a tiny bit of damage, but the fireball barrage will likely continue, draining his life bar. 3, Ken can counter with a fireball of his own. 4, if Ryu mistimes his fireball, Ken can leap straight up as the fireball sails underneath.
Anyway, so that alone should show you that that is one of the key components of fighting games is spacing. I mean, he did a great job of talking what else. And it seems like this 100% lacks it, 1000%. There's absolutely no footsies. And on top of that, it's like there's not enough buttons. You saw that's just on spacing alone. It's not even mentioning buttons, overheads, lows, throws. I don't even think there's gonna be throws in there. But if I'm being honest, I think because of the state of VR, you can't really have this. Like, imagine trying to move very specific. It'd be too annoying. And then imagine the headache you get, especially if you get thrown, but your body's not being thrown. I can see why throws are not in there, 100%. Like, because it's VR. Like, people are really prone to headaches as it is. Adding crap like that is just one of the reasons why I think you can never truly translate a fighting game to VR. And if you guys are curious on watching more, this is the only one that he made. But if you guys want to know more, there's a dude who literally covers like core gaming that goes into really layman's terms on how fighting games work. I mean, one of the best videos right here is why button mashing doesn't work. It's like 17 minutes and he perfectly explains things like jabs, overheads, throws, you know, like super basic concepts of fighting game. He doesn't even cover spacing as good as that video, believe it or not, but just enough to where you're like, okay, yeah, I get it. And that alone should show you just how deep fighting games are, and that's something that a lot of people don't understand. And like I said, execution is another thing. Like I said, what if he mistimes a fireball? How do you really, I mean, I guess you could do like how the Switch version of Street Fighter did, where you have to do the hand motion, which is cool, but it's not the same as, I don't know, taking a literal year to master, you know, quarter circle. But yeah, again, has great videos to check out core gaming. But that's the only thing I get is that it seems that the whole arcade style fighting reimagined for VR, like I said, we established why for VR it doesn't work, and reimagined is like, okay, they're taking their own interpretations as you have to. But it almost seems like because of the way they word it, either one, the dev team doesn't really know much about fighting, like they're very normie as you would. I'm assuming a good number of you have no idea how deep fighting games actually are, right? Or maybe you do, this is my channel. But, or maybe they do and then they realize the limitations of what they have to do and they have to get it in an artificial way. But if I'm being honest, it seems more like they get it in a normie sense, because a lot of this stuff, like personally I don't like the art style. I don't know, something else about it looks off, and even someone in Discord said like that seems like a super from like these bars, everything. It doesn't scream Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, or Tekken. It screams like a normie game, you know? Like nothing wrong with that, but you know, it seems like they're more normies. They're not, even this CA looks like garbage, I'm gonna be honest. This critical art looks like trash. Or who knows, maybe their art team is just normies and the actual people who make it are like fighting game developers. But yeah, and then even think the other reason I want to finally get why I think a fighting game could just never work is the way fighting games work is, see, because in VR you have to have full motion at every single second, right? And you move left, right, you know, it's kind of flimsy all over the place. But for fighting games, they're not like that. They're not full fluid motion. You have very specific things you have to do. And let's see, I was like, oh, I could literally just show one of my fighting games. So, actually, you know what? We'll show one when I was doing. Like here's a good example, right? So see how they're moving? The movement is whatever, right? See, let's show when I actually do a move, right? With the driver. That's parry, that's probably okay, so you see how he does this sequence of down, medium. Like, you could do the down, medium, and it'd be fine, right? But then, first of all, most people do not have the athletics to do that. Hell no. And then second, the thing about it, we can break it down in frames, is that the way fighting games work, look at how long he holds that pose. People don't kick like that. Like when you kick, it's a fluid one and go motion, right? You put your feet down from the ground, and then you just slowly go, But in fighting games, it goes from here, you start legs, snap, snap, hold. See how he's holding it? Most people would already be putting their foot down. Basically, what I'm saying is fighting games don't really use realistic animations in certain aspects, right? Like movement, everything, that's no problem, right? Even your generic hits, but when doing special moves, not in the slightest. And that would be really fucking weird, and you couldn't have that. Imagine having this, but your foot is actually down, because IRL, you cannot hold a pose like that unless you're God tier. And that's going to be misleading information for the other person that's fighting you. This is another reason I think fighting games don't translate well with VR. It'd have to be a completely different thing of its own, and that's one thing that I do want to get, is that I'm glad that at least someone's breaking the barrier to that, right? You know, no one can hit like this, and they're over-exaggerated. Like, there are points that, like, you just can't. And it's because they use traditional animation sometimes. Well, actually, oddly, Street Fighter is more, like, this one isn't as exaggerated as other fighting games, so this is kind of a bad example, if I'm being honest. If I would have showed you one, you would have seen literally, it wouldn't have been as fluid. Like, if you would have seen leg up, leg held. And here, it's a bit more fluid, so not the best example, but regardless, I think the pose in itself is a good indicator, right? And see, even a good example, look at how good this critical art is. Look at that. Yeah, you're not going to be able to do a critical art. like that. And again, look at the spacing and everything. You just won't be able to mimic this. They also don't have a wall mechanic, which is the super important component of fighting. Yeah, there's no way you can do any of that, bro. And again, when you have sides that it's just fighting games are complicated. They're complicated as hell. But yeah, no, I think it's about everything I wanted to really cover. Big shout out to Swass, the guy who posted it. Go check him out. He's a big VR guy, like huge VR guy, as you can see. He might check it out. I don't have the VR equipment to do that. All I have is PSVR, man. And the thing is, I'm really fond to the depth of modern fighting games. That going something that would be technically baby down wouldn't be my cup of tea, but it does seem like fun. Like I think I like the component where you deflect these back. I actually really like that. It does seem like it's gonna have some component of rock paper scissors. And what's crazy, you guys saw that with the whole spacing and everything. That's been there since Street Fighter 2. That's the crazy part. It's nothing new. That's not me getting into things like burst, Roman canceling, FADC, you know, these are things that add layers to the fighting game. But the crazy is they don't break that rock paper scissors formula. If you guys notice in a lot of modern games, there'll be like again rock paper scissors formula. You know, this beats that and that beats this, but it loses to that. Pokemon does it, right? Water loses to electricity, electricity loses to earth, earth loses to water, and then you know it's a circle of repeating, right? Rock paper scissors. But then when they introduce new components, it just ruins that skew, right? So, whereas fighting games, they actually still maintain that rock paper formula even while adding mechanics on top of that, and it just goes to show you how much goes into balancing. And it's one of the reasons why fighting games lack a lot of content. Actually, they spend so much time in balancing, they don't really have that much to actually put in terms of content. Because people complain, it's fighting games, bro. It's 1v1, and people are gonna complain about anything that isn't, you know, fine-tuned far more than anything else, even a shooter, for example. Like, dude, it's like you could always just blame your teammates. It's perfectly good. But yeah, that'll about cover my thoughts and opinions on the VR fighting game. I mean, it's cool. I'm glad that, you know, you got to start somewhere. I mean, I always did want to do a VR fighting game. I don't know if this is the way to go about it. I mean, I'm pretty sure it'd be chivalry. That's it. Like, I feel like something closer to chivalry would be the way to do it, or feeling like sports champions. But I don't know. Like, it's fine. You have to do what you can, and not everybody has the space to move like fully 3D, whatever. I mean, that's the thing. Right now, VR is in its infancy stage, or maybe past it. I'd say past it for sure. But you know, just some thoughts. Plus, I mean, let's actually get like a fighting game player's perspective on it. But yeah, in a sense, it's not really like a fighting game. I don't think anyone's surprised by that statement. But it's in a weird bottom. I think it's in its own genre. And if I'm being honest, I think it's close. I would say it's up to where Sports Champion and Wii is, because you're kind of there, but it moves for you kind of sense. And even if, let's say, it's deeper than both of those, I'd still say it's within the same category. Because again, we all call, you know, 2D fighters, like Street Fighter 2 is the most basic, fundamental, but it has the core aspects that make it. And then we have games like Street Fighter 6, which are way more complicated, all kinds of shit, but it's still the core game. And this, in my opinion, I think it's largely the same to what Sports Champion and because again, I don't know if it tracks your head. If it does, it's just an extra layer. But generally, you know, it focuses you on blocking over trying to dodge and weave, because you can't really do that in VR. So I would, or not VR, you know, rip off Wii Sports. But yeah, I'll call it by now. I mean, hopefully it wasn't too long. I don't want to edit it. I don't know if there's too many empty spots. But yeah, if you guys want fighting game stuff, you know, you're already on the channel. If not, just Twitch. If you want to see live, there you see me play ranked. I mean, I'm on a mini break for fighting games right now. Plus, I should mention that I have commentated before, so I have a very keen visual eye for doing this stuff. But there's also a project I'm helping work on, and that's why I'm even more familiar now with a lot of this stuff about animation and whatnot. Granted, I had some prior knowledge, but I obviously have way more knowledge of how fighting games work. Yeah, and I'm helping to work on that. So of course, the bigger qualifications to talk about this. But yeah, I don't want to take too long. Then the video's gonna look long, and then YouTube's gonna be like, oh, fuck you. But yeah, we'll just end it there.